All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to get into the Cowboys Saints game. The Saints 44 to 19 over the Cowboys. This was definitely, there were definitely some shockers yesterday. This is one of them. Look, the Saints last week, they beat the Panthers, but I don't know. It was how they beat them, though, that was different. Because last year, they swept the season series between the Panthers, but they kind of struggled a little bit doing that in those two games. They still won them, but they really dominated against the Panthers week one. 47 points. Derek Carr looked good, and it was a different feel with that. But this was a true test for them, for a lot of people. Including myself. I was like, this is a true test for them against the Cowboys. If you could beat the Cowboys in their stadium, where they typically play really well, then I think, we'll start having conversations like, you know what, maybe the Saints are legit. And not only did they beat the Cowboys, this was really not a game. This was never really a game. When it was 21-13, but the Saints were basically in control of this game the entire time, from the start. And yeah, I think we got to start having conversations about the Saints. Because if you go back to last year, Derek Carr finished the season strong. And I kept saying throughout the whole offseason, are they going to be able to carry that momentum from last year, towards the end of last year, to now? And so far they have. And they've put up 40-plus points the first 2 weeks of the year. So yeah, I think we got to start having some conversations about the Saints. Derek Carr, another efficient day. Also, one of my complaints, though, late in the game, they're still throwing it because he did have an interception in this game. But, why are the Saints still throwing the ball? Do you want the Cowboys to try to come back? So, yeah, Derek Carr, another efficient day. Only went 11 of 16 for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns, but still, solid game for him. Connecting with Rashid Shaheed for, I think, a 70-yard touchdown. Rashid Shaheed has looked good these first 2 weeks. He ended up being their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. Chris Olave had 4 for 81. But Alvin Kamara, he was another player that shined in this game, as I have on the show segment. 20 carries for 115 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he also had a receiving touchdown in this game. The longest receiving touchdown of his career. It was a 57-yard receiving touchdown that he took to the house. Looked like vintage Alvin Kamara, which is huge. If Kamara is going to be the Kamara that we know from, really the prime Kamara years, we were talking about the Christmas game from the COVID season. That's how good Kamara played. And if that's the Kamara that we're getting this year from the Saints, that just makes them even more dangerous. So, props to the Saints. They surprised me yesterday. And now they go into a game against the Eagles next week at home. I think they could win that game. Let's see how the Eagles play tonight. But I think that's a game they could definitely win. Yeah, I really like how the Saints are playing right now. But yeah, props to Derek Carr, props to Alvin Kamara. For the Saints defense, they had 3 sacks in this game, a couple of turnovers, a couple of interceptions off of Dak Prescott. So, yeah, I really like what I'm seeing from the Saints so far. This looks like a different team than last year. So I thought, listen, I thought about it briefly, do I take the 6.5? But I'm like, they beat the Panthers though, and the Panthers again looked bad yesterday. So I was like, I can't do it. The Cowboys are good at home. I think they should. I thought the Saints would be competitive, but I thought the Cowboys would ultimately cover the number and win outright, but that did not happen. The Saints just dominated this game. We got Diggs, BTW1 in the chat saying, "What's up? What's going on?" Now, as for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott went 27-39 for 293 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. The Cowboys only ran the ball for 68 yards. Part of that was because they were playing from behind. CeeDee Lamb was their leading receiver, of course, 4 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Dak Prescott recovered a fumble in this game. He lost the fumble, but he was able to get it back. The defense only had 1 sack. Derek Carr was well protected in this game. But, yeah, this was a very lopsided game. So the Saints, on their first drive, they went right down the field, went up 7-0. Carr connected with Chris Olave for 39 yards, and that led to Alvin Kamara's first touchdown of the game. Cowboys answered with a field goal. Then the Saints answered with another touchdown. One play, Derek Carr connected with Rashid Shaheed for 70 yards to make it 14-3. Cowboys then answered with a field goal. So the first two the team's first 2 drives, they both scored. It's just the Saints were cashing in and getting touchdowns. The Cowboys were only getting field goals. Then the Saints scored another touchdown, and that was Alvin Kamara's second touchdown. That was a 57-yard touchdown reception that he took to the house. Cowboys then answered with a touchdown. Dak Prescott connected with CeeDee Lamb for 65 yards. Then the Saints scored they scored a touchdown on their first 5 drives. That's unbelievable. And that was Alvin Kamara's third touchdown, so that made it 28-13. Then Dak Prescott threw a pick. Saints scored again. Derek Carr, a QB sneak to make it 35-13. Cowboys got another field goal. So it was 35-16 at the half. Cowboys got another field goal to open up the second half to make it 35-19. The Saints scored again. I didn't realize that the Saints did not punt for most of this game. Well, kind of makes sense, but still. I thought there were some punts in between all this. But yeah, Alvin Kamara, another touchdown. So that made it 41-19. Cowboys turned it over on downs. Then Derek Carr threw a pick. So yeah, the first time the Saints punted was in the fourth quarter. That's unbelievable. I thought they would at least have punted once or twice in the first half. I wasn't super locked into every single game yesterday, but wow, that's unbelievable. But yeah, I just don't understand why in the fourth quarter, Derek Carr is still throwing the ball. It ended up getting intercepted, but it didn't really matter because the Cowboys are not coming back from that. But actually, yeah, it didn't matter because then on the very first play of the Cowboys' drive after the Carr interception in the fourth quarter, Dak Prescott threw a pick. So it just rough game for the Cowboys, and I do have my concerns with the Cowboys. One thing is still the running game. Again, they had to go away from it because they were down by so much. But that's one thing I do worry about. Also, the biggest concern for me is the defense. The defense got absolutely shredded yesterday. I don't know. They're missing Deron Bland. I don't know if Deron Bland really makes that big of a difference yesterday. I think he does help, of course, but I don't know how much of a help he would have been yesterday because Derek Carr and that offense just absolutely destroyed their defense. You got to blame Mike Zimmer. What happened? This Cowboys defense has a lot of talent. Micah Parsons, where was he yesterday? DeMarcus Lawrence, where are these guys on defense? But credit to the Saints offensive line because I know I was talking with one of my coworkers yesterday, and he talked about how the Saints offensive line is better than people think. And you saw that. They only got to Derek Carr once. 1 sack. So I have my concerns with the Cowboys defense. And that looked like the defense that we saw against the Packers in the playoff game. That got absolutely shredded. And this defense has a lot of talent on it. Like I said, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, you got Trayvon Diggs back. But, if you're going to keep doing this, that's not good, and that puts a lot of pressure on your offense too. Last week, the Cowboys were comfortable. Deshaun Watson was giving them the ball, and Dak didn't have to put up huge numbers because the Browns' offense was just that bad last week. And by the way, they picked up a win yesterday against the Jaguars, so we'll get into that at some point this week as well. But yeah, it's not good. And now the Cowboys, they're still at home next week, but they take on the Ravens, who are 0-2, and the Ravens are looking to get their first win. So that is a big game in Dallas next week with those two teams. But yeah, I feel like that also just says this game to me. I think I would lean more towards saying this is a little bit more about the Saints because once again they put up 40 points. And the offense just looks so much different than last year. And I think we got to, give the Saints some respect and buy into them a little bit. Like right now, them and the Bucs are 2-0. The Falcons, I mean, it's going to take some time for Kirk Cousins to, get back into the swing of things, and we'll see how he plays tonight. But I mean, this looks like a different Saints team than what we saw last year, for most of last year. So I mean, if Derek Carr and the Saints are going to keep playing like this, like, yeah, we gotta, start having some conversations about them. So, but yeah, I do have my concerns with the Cowboys. I still think this is going to be a good regular season team. I still believe that they're going to make it to the playoffs. I'm not going to panic on them, but they got their flaws, and that was something that people talked about going into the season. Is they do have flaws, and yes, they do. But I still think that, despite all that, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but that's all I have them doing. So I don't have them going on this deep playoff run. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game from yesterday. What were some of your takeaways? Again, props to the Saints. Derek Carr, another good game, and Alvin Kamara. I mean, that was Christmas Kamara, basically. I mean, he needed 2 more touchdowns, and he would have matched the amount that he had on Christmas a few years ago. And Eric Kendricks was a part of that Vikings defense. So, Eric Kendricks, they brought him over, and, Mike Zimmer was there. So, Mike Zimmer and Eric Kendricks, they actually know a thing or two about Alvin Kamara having big games against their defense. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? So, actually, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat. This will help create a super chat. Any thoughts or comments you may have throughout the show, I will acknowledge the super chat on the live broadcast, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the San Francisco 49ers Minnesota Vikings game. The Vikings pulling off the upset. We'll get into that. Talk about some concerns I have for the 49ers as well going forward. And talk about the Vikings win, starting off 2-0 in the season. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.